gene therapy just restored 60% of a missing protein in boys with a fatal muscle disease. And that might be the beginning of the end for Duchenne. Good morning. Welcome to Brightside Daily. I'm Rory, alongside Elizabeth.
And today, we've got 4 stories that prove progress doesn't take weekends off, even on a Friday the 13th.
We're starting with a medical breakthrough that could rewrite the future for thousands of families facing an impossible diagnosis.
Plus, India's solar surge is smashing records, a chemistry experiment that failed in the best possible way, and an ancient antelope that refused to go extinct.
Let's get into it. Imagine being told your son has a disease that will take away his ability to walk, then his ability to breathe, and that there's nothing medicine can do about it. That's the reality for families facing Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It affects about 1 in every 5,000 boys born worldwide. Most won't live past their 20s. But this week, a trial called SGT-003 delivered results that researchers are calling extraordinary. 40 children across the United States, Canada, Italy, and the United Kingdom received a single dose of gene therapy. Within 90 days, their muscles were producing 60% of a critical protein their bodies couldn't make on their own.
60% from a single dose. And that's not the only number worth paying attention to. Markers of active muscle damage dropped by 44%. That means the muscles weren't just producing the protein, they were actually getting stronger.
Exactly what makes this different from previous treatments. Until now, the best options for Duchenne were steroids and physiotherapy, slowing the damage, not fixing the cause. SGT-003 goes after the broken gene itself. Now, this is still a phase 1 half trial. Longer-term data is needed, and gene therapies are complex. There are real questions about immune responses, durability, and eventually, cost and access.
But Solid Biosciences is already pursuing accelerated approval. And for families who've spent years hearing there's nothing we can do, that word, accelerated, means everything.
For a disease that's had no real treatment options for decades, this isn't just a promising trial. It's proof that the science has finally caught up to the need.
143.6 gigawatts. That's India's total solar capacity as of last month. And here's the number that really tells the story. They added 7.8 gigawatts in just the first 2 months of 2026. To put that in context, that's roughly the entire installed solar capacity of some European countries. Added in 60 days.
And this was during a period of genuine supply chain disruption. Middle East tensions were pushing up costs and slowing deliveries globally. India just kept building.
Solar now makes up more than 66% of India's renewable energy capacity, excluding large hydro. Back in 2010, when the National Solar Mission launched, total capacity was under 3 gigawatts. They've multiplied that nearly 50 times over. The target is 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. A few years ago, that looked wildly ambitious. Right now, it's starting to look like a floor, not a ceiling.
There are still real challenges: grid integration, energy storage, panel maintenance at this scale, and most panels are still imported, which creates its own vulnerability.
True, but when a developing nation of 1.4 billion people is deploying clean energy at this pace, the question stops being, can it be done? It becomes, who's next?
All right, this one's for everyone who's ever had a plan go completely sideways and wondered if something good might come of it. A team of chemists set out to run a fairly standard experiment. It failed, spectacularly.
And that's where it gets interesting.
What they found instead was an entirely new method for a fundamental chemical process used in drug manufacturing. It's called an anti-Friedel-Crafts alkylation. Don't worry, there won't be a test. The point is, it can make it cheaper and more efficient to produce a whole range of medicines. The results were published in Nature, which tells you the scientific community is taking this seriously. Traditional pharmaceutical synthesis often involves multiple steps, expensive materials, and harsh conditions. This new pathway could simplify all of that.
And the global implications are huge. If you can reduce the cost of manufacturing a drug, you can reduce the cost of the drug itself. For millions of people in lower-income countries, that's the difference between treatment and no treatment.
Now, we're still at the laboratory stage. Scaling this to industrial production involves years of development and regulatory work.
But the discovery itself is a reminder of something scientists have known forever. Sometimes the experiment that goes wrong is the one that changes everything. As Louis Pasteur put it, chance favors the prepared mind. Right. So I need to tell you about an animal. It survived ice ages. It walked alongside woolly mammoths. It has a nose that looks like a small trunk, designed to filter dust and warm freezing air on the Central Asian steppe. And a few years ago, it nearly vanished from the earth completely.
The Saiga antelope. I remember reading about the mass die-off in 2015. Over 200,000 animals lost in a matter of weeks from a bacterial outbreak, on top of years of poaching for their horns.
Devastating, but this week, the Saiga's conservation status was officially upgraded from endangered to near threatened. That's the result of years of coordinated work. Strengthened anti-poaching patrols, habitat protection, and crucially, programs that gave local communities alternative livelihoods so they didn't need to poach. Kazakhstan's government, working with international partners, essentially built a safety net around the species. And the Saiga responded.
Near threatened is still precarious, though. Climate change, disease risk, those pressures haven't gone away.
No, they haven't. And that's worth saying. But consider what this species has been through. Millions of years of survival, nearly wiped out in a few decades by human activity, and now climbing back because humans decided to fix what they'd broken. An animal that outlasted the mammoth is still here, and that's not a small thing.
Time for our rapid fire round. Here are this week's numbers that matter.
500. That's how many griffon vultures now soar over Sardinia, up from near zero in 2010. Turns out, stop poisoning them and they come back. Who knew?
Double. That's how much faster tropical forests recover when their soil has enough nitrogen. New research in Nature found that this single nutrient could transform reforestation efforts worldwide.
1.4 million. That's the number of Americans living with Lewy body dementia, the third most common form of dementia, but one of the least treated. This week, the FDA cleared Phase 3 trials for niflamapimidine, a drug that may actually slow the disease rather than just manage symptoms.
And 46 million? That's the number of women farmers in India now receiving support through the National Rural Livelihood Mission. Women produce up to 80% of food in the developing world. Giving them proper resources isn't just fair, it's smart. That's your Brightside Daily for Friday.
If any of these stories made you feel a bit more hopeful about the world, share this episode with someone who could use some good news today.
And if you want the full stories with all the links and sources, head to thebrightside.news. Everything we cover is there in detail.
Have a brilliant weekend, everyone. We'll see you Monday.
Until then, keep looking for the good stuff. It's out there.
It really is. See you next week.